very thankful for your warm welcome, and I have very good time here. Madison is such an interesting place because of Foxconn's new investment, and my research on Foxconn and Chinese workers had been continued for almost a decade. That had been taking me from my dissertation project, and then I completed my PhD in 2014 and continued to work on this book. And this is really a trigger, a spark for me to look deeper into the student interns issue. And I am anticipating that Foxconn in Wisconsin, it will be also receiving interns, and I hope the interning system here is much better than what I have witnessed in China. And there are many issues that I would like to bring up in this talk, and you are also an expert. I would expect many discussions and questions from you, and I hope I would learn from you as well. So thank you so much for being here. Today's talk, the title is Internships and Vocational Skills Training in China. And I would like to use my own perspectives on labor or labor politics to start off, because when I look into student internship, it is a class-based issue, and it does matter with the job market in China. So I would like to, first of all, talk a little bit on the rural to urban migration. So labor migrants, working class kids, and then I will focus more on the vocational high school system in China. And there are two case studies that I have been doing. One is focusing on electronics factories, and that is mainly about Foxconn's internship. But from manufacturing to service work, there have been a growing number of interns as well. Because I'm not sure whether during the Thanksgiving, you also buy a lot of stuff online. And because of e-commerce, online sales, it also prompt or stimulate the new service work in terms of logistics, transportation, and delivery. So I'm also looking into the student interns development in that sector. And then my main argument is about the emergencies of a student labor system or a student labor regime in China, and what we might learn about the specificities in China related to global capital and the political economy. So I will characterize a student labor system in China, and then finally have some thoughts on how to make it better instead of a very exploitative or abusive system. Okay, so such a long introduction about the outline or organization of the talk. So now let me get into the specifics. In China, there are many provinces, especially those in the coastal areas. Beijing is the capital city, or Shanghai, and in the south, we got Shenzhen and the Pure with the Delta region. All these big cities become the main sites of receiving the internal migrants or the rural migrants. Say in Beijing, there are 22 million in terms of the population, quite a large number. In Hong Kong, there are only 7 million in terms of the population. And Shanghai is one of the largest cities in China that have 24 million. And in these two cities, respectively, rural migrants take up about 40% of the population. And this rural to urban pattern is repeated in many other big towns or large cities in China. So this group of rural migrants, they become the main workforce in China. And look at these statistics from 2008 to 2018. We see the changes in terms of the rural migrant working force. On the one hand, we see the aging population here. If we look at the age group from age 41 to 50, and then another group above 50, the two lines, they are all going up. So it indicates the aging population in China. And then here, those who are between 16 and 20 years old, by contrast, it is a declining proportion. So what does it mean? It is not just about the decrease in terms of birth rate, but it also implies that many young people, they are staying longer in school. So I have been thinking about all these changes in terms of the job market, the rural migrant population, and then think more on these young people. So there have been more opportunities for rural kids or urban children to be in the school. And I have been looking into the intersection between education and the economy. If there are more opportunities for these young people to study in school and they are of the working class background, their parents are also migrants, parents really want their kids to move up. So one day they will not be like us, so hard working in the factories, on the construction sites, and the parents are really investing a lot on their kids to build their brighter future. So there are more opportunities, the government support, and vocational training and learning for these young kids are really crucial so that they might also be able to improve their life chance or to move upward mobile. So as I started to look into the educational opportunities and the training that would be available to these rural migrant children or urban children, I came across one vocational school, and this is the mission statement I translated here: unification of school and business, unification of theory and practice, unification of teacher and technician, and finally, unification of student and employee. So you see 4 unifications. If it does happen in the reality, this will be really ideal. There is a good mixture and combination of theory and practices, teaching, but it is also leading to more vocational work-specific skills and technical training. That would be nice. So in China, how does it play out? We then look into the vocational school system, where there are the concepts and theories that are taught in the classroom, and then that could be applicable in the workplace. So Chinese students have completed 9 years compulsory education, 6 years primary school, plus 3-year junior middle school or junior secondary school level. So they have done 9 years of education, and when they are about 15 or 16 years old, they might have 2 options, okay? One, they will go to the academic track, and then they will also compete in the exam, want to get into the college or university. But the other track is exactly more about job-oriented. So I focus on the vocational high school students who do not go into the job market, but who really wish to gain their specialized certificate or educational credential so that they might be more able to get a better job in the job market. So these kids are about 16 years old to 18 years old. Some are younger, about 15 years old. The standard vocational school education system at the high school level are like this. The first 2 years will be spending in the classroom. So it is employment-oriented courses that will be offered by the young students. And then in the 3rd and final year of their educational study, they should take an internship in the workplace. It might be a company, it might be a restaurant, a hotel. It should be tied up to their own major of studies. So there should be a good fit between what they learn, their majors, and what they do with regard to their internship. According to the Chinese law, the internship, how long will it last? Well, this is interesting. I see the national differences, maybe in the UK or in the US, sometimes are longer, sometimes are shorter. But in China, the standard duration is 6 months. Student internship in China is a required component. It is mandatory in the Chinese vocational education system. What does it mean by mandatory? If they cannot complete 6-month internship, they will not be able to graduate on time. So this is a compulsory, a required component. And these internships, as I define or look into it, they should be the one that is coordinated by the vocational school teachers on behalf of the students, and that is a pass requirements to fulfill their credit to be able to graduate on time. There are different types of internship. As these kids, they go up to the university level, they might choose their own internship, and they do it on themselves by their own will or wishes. But at the high school level, these internships are coordinated or managed by their schools. it has some implications though. That means maybe not everyone could go to the workplace of their own choice. It is arranged in the bulk, in massive numbers. The Chinese government have been investing a lot on the vocational high school because of the needs, the economic needs. There have been critical shortage of skilled workers in China, and after the global financial crisis in 2008 and 2009, the economy recovered actually quite fast because of the Chinese government putting lots of money on infrastructure and to rebuild and stimulate the economy. And this again have the push factor for more interns and skilled technicians in the market. All these are the more immediate changes in China. And let us look at the past 20 years or so. At the turn of a new century from 2001 to nowadays 2018, we can see that there are the popularity among the academic track, high school. When we look at the solid line, we see a rapid growth of those kids who would choose academic track, and then until 2005 or 6, it becomes quite stable. It's hovering between 24 or 25 million. So in China, about 25 million of these teenagers, they are in the academic track. And look at these dotted lines. There have been students who enroll in the vocational high schools, and here is the turning point. Despite the government effort in encouraging more schools, better teachers, more popular courses in the high school, we witness a sharp decline, and it's all going down until about 15 or 16 million nowadays. So here comes to really a big puzzle. Why? Despite there have been lots of resources and emphasis on vocational high school in China, why the students are not taking it? Maybe part of the reason is the changes in demographic pattern in China, lower birth rates. However, if so, why not we also see a parallel decline in the high school? We only see a sharp decline, a sharp drop in the vocational level. So this becomes quite puzzling to me, and I want to find out why. So I begin to do the research and more focus in these recent years. I understand that Chinese leaders want to enhance labor productivity through the expansion and investment in vocational training. And students from poor families, they would be especially supported by giving scholarships, grants, or subsidies. There have been more training for teachers so that teachers are not only knowing what is in the textbook, they also know how to hands-on deliver the skills to the students. And new schools offer different subjects, quite a wide range of subjects. So more students might got their own hobbies and interests and do it. Finally, in terms of the hardware, just like where we are now in this very luxurious conference room, we got better facilities for the students in China also, with the computers or advanced machineries and equipment. These all putting together is giving the students a better learning environment. And especially when President Xi Jinping, who came to power since about 2012 or 2013 to today, it has the emphasis on Made in China 2025 project that is emphasizing on smart manufacturing or a more advanced form of manufacturing, industrial upgrading, technological advancement, R&D, and that we also emphasize a lot on the digital economy. You don't have to use cash to go for your transactions. You just use a mobile phone and to have all the transactions via Alipay or other form of mobile payment. And this really stimulate quicker and shorter time in terms of online sales, and it stimulate the warehousing and logistic transportation and delivering jobs. So all these are why I am looking into manufacturing and service work. China have been emphasizing on vocational education, but still based on some literatures in China, we know that there have been the strong stereotype, and it is quite negative. Those students who are less competitive, unmotivated, or they are the bad students, they are the failure in the academic exams, then they will end up in getting into the vocational school. So this negative conception about vocational education is not just among the students. Sometimes the parents or other educational policy decision makers, they also seem to downplay vocational education. So the significance of vocational education or the prestige, the esteem of studying in a vocational school, that seems to be much less than you are in a key points or a high-level elitist urban high school. So sometimes I also talk to these students and they would share the negative or low opinion about their own education. The gap here, though, although I don't deny that some vocational schools may not be offering quality education, but vocational education doesn't stop or confine to vocational school. Knowledge transfer and skills assessment continue during the internship at the firm level. And the process of vocational training and internship is understudied. And this is also the background when I came across Matt, his work and some of your writings in terms of internship and vocational education in the States. And my inputs or intervention here is that when we look into vocational training, we have to look into the role of these companies. And they are the profit-making companies, they are the private corporations, even though there are state-owned enterprises as well. But because the state-owned enterprises also more interest in generating profit or revenue nowadays, productivity or the investment of their resources on interns, that is open to question. We should not assume that when these students get to the workplace, they will be properly trained or provide with the skills training. So this is the black box that I want to open up. What does it look like when interns get to a workplace, how the program is being managed or administered? And the second perspective or second element that I have to look into internship is the role of the Chinese state. The Chinese government have been actively involved in defining who are student interns. Are they workers? Are they employees? Or under the law, they are still regarded as the students. And this is again important. The government and the market are not two separable domains. The state does define who are the interns and what are your rights, what are your obligations and responsibilities. And in China, because interns remained as the students, they are not entitled to job protection or insurance, pensions, and labor markets contract. So labor contract or employment contract, that is also one thing that is missing here. I will explain more by some empirical evidence, but here the point is internship is not just about the school or company. It is not just about school-business partnership. It does matter with the political economy, the legal structure, and the role of the state. And the Chinese government would not be able to implement legal protections, and labor and educational issues become quite an urgent matter or question that we have to deal with. In my own research, I asked specifically 3 questions. Then how can we understand the work and training experiences from the perspective of the interns? What do they expect about their internship and what are the learning outcomes? The second is, what exactly are out there in terms of the training content and the skills, the evaluation method at the workplace? Are there managers or supervisors who are taking care of these students, have a program that would measure at the point when they come in and at the point when they go out, any added value, any meaningful training that had been offered. And the third and final question is, how do the interns and their co-workers seek to improve the working conditions? This is more about the agency part. How interns adapt to the environment, but also seek to changing it for better, especially if the working conditions are dangerous or the training in itself is actually very empty and not meaningful. So all these are some questions that I want to tackle. In the following, let me be quick to recap what I have found in the Foxconn factories in China. The interns are a hidden group, a hidden labor group. I have never thought of meeting the interns in the Foxconn factories because they are young, they just look like any other rural migrants. And as I look deeper, I understand that they are arranged by their teachers and the teacher follow them. Inside Foxconn, in just one summer, the total number of interns is as many as 150,000. So we are not just talking about 1,000. We are referring to 150,000 interns for dozens of schools all over China. And they are working in more than 40 factories of Foxconn in the coastal, central, and the western area. And this is nearly 15% of the 1 million strong workforce of Foxconn. To put it short, Foxconn is representative in a way that it is the largest employer who take in the highest number of interns ever in China. And there have been the cartoons here. It is a mockery, an ironic representation of the student interns. You can see that they do not have the eyes to see, they do not have the mouth to speak. What they can do is just listen to the command. Well, at one point of time, even the governments are pushing the schools to send in a certain number of students to Foxconn. I know these are the Chinese characters, but I also translated. The red color refers to the government in Henan province. There is the education department that points all these kids to intern in Foxconn. So the building is referring to the Foxconn factory. So this is just one example from Henan province in central part of China, but in so many other provinces, there have been the coordinating effort among the local governments and the schools and how they push all these teenagers to Foxconn. Even though you are studying arts and music, education, hotel management, computer science, and so on, all different subjects, but you have to do the assembly of iPhones or iPad. And they are just taken in as any other ordinary rural migrants. This is the picture that I took for a group of 60 students who were sent in 2 coaches on the 3rd of March 2011. It was just after the Chinese New Year when it was still so cold, but I traveled to the southwestern part of China, Sichuan province, and I took this picture. They already finished their Chinese New Year festival and they start their internship. So Foxconn studies really take me so much time, many years, and I've been interviewing the students and teachers. What I find is quite alarming here. First of all, they are the young group of students, only 16, 17, not yet adult, but they are not the final year students. Only a small number of them are in their final year. Some just start their coursework in the 1st and 2nd year, and this is illegal. But so it really opens up the black box now. Despite there are policies, there are rules and regulations, but in reality, it shifts. There have been the problems here, not only the young students who do not yet have their proper classroom learning, but they are already doing practical factory work in the factories. But secondly, it is a mismatch about what they are learning in the school. So interns are subject to the same conditions as regular workers. They have to work day and night. Again, according to the Chinese regulations, you should not put any teenagers at risk. If you are pushing them to work over the night, they cannot have proper rest. But in Foxconn, it is 1 month day shift, and then the next month you will go to night shift, and then day shift again. It is a cycle, day and night alternate shift. And they are working overtime 10 to 12 hours a day, but according to the law, 8 hours is the normal legal working time. And they are not just working 5 days a week, it is lasting for the whole week, 6 to 7 days. These are the internship that is really flexible. Even though according to the law, 6 months is the normative period, but in Foxconn, when the seasonal production, the high production month, they need more human hands, then they bring in the students. But if they are not needed, they will be sent back to the school. So the duration of internship is actually a variable. It could start from 3 months up to 6 months to about a year. So that is indeed, Foxconn is an empire with its own rule. It is determining how an internship program will look like. Then from 2010, not only that summer, but in 2011, when September, another semester began, then I understand there were up to 7,000 interns, and they are assembling our iPads, because in one factory, there is only one product for one buyer, and that is Apple, who buys iPads from Foxconn. So the causation is very clear here. Apple knows that there are interns who are not studying, but building the iPads for themselves. So we learned more about Apple. If Apple is a company that cares about education, cares about corporate image or its own responsibility, how would you tolerate there are so many underage, well, that means under 18 years of age? How many interns are working here in the name of internship but without acquiring new skills? This is a big ethical issue that we have to highlight in terms of the global production structure. As I teach, I taught to the teachers, I talk to the students, I understand that some large schools, they will send in more than 160 students to the Foxconn factory in one time, while the other one, they might even send in more than 300. It really depends on the size of the school. And these school teachers, they go with their students. The teachers are also living in the dormitories, just like their students, because now teaching is not taking place in the classroom or in the school. Everyone have to go into the factories, and therefore the teachers are serving a double role. They are the teacher, but they are also the manager in the factory, that they are monitoring, disciplining the students, and the students have to listen to both their teachers and the managers. But using teacher is good, because why? Teacher have the authority, teacher have the trust of the students. It helps management to maintain at a very low cost. Okay, so the teachers and the student ratio is 1 to 50. At a large school where there are 300 students, there will be 6 teachers who are managing them, usually 3 male teachers as well as 3 female teachers. So teachers and students, they are doing internship in the factory, while teachers do not have to work anything online. Teachers have access to the computer record so that they know whether the students are going to work on time, whether the students are doing overtime work, and whether the students are just playing online game in their dormitory. So you see, it is a very sophisticated management system, but that teachers are, no matter whether they are voluntary or involuntarily, they were brought into the student internship system. Well, here it does open up a lot of questions. What are the role of the teachers? Can they also say no to this kind of what students would describe as a fake internship? Can the teacher also resist and not to play into the internship program like that? Throughout my field work, I learned that the teachers are actually trying to calm down the students because the retention rate of the students here will tie to the bonus or the payment to the teachers. So the teachers are receiving double pay, and their role is to really manage the students, to listen to their factory leaders and do their work properly. And that is assembling our iPhones or iPads. The students have to do overtime, and teachers are there to monitor them. Interns are paid, they are paid at the same level of wage as any other new workers in Foxconn, but they are not entitled to the productivity bonus. In this way, Foxconn saves lots of money. Foxconn will not take interns as a more trained or high-level workforce. They will be only paid at the minimum level in the factory. And interns do the same work, but they are just not entitled to any productivity pay. And they do not have the government insurance. If the school are more responsible, they might pay some private insurance scheme. But if not, then these interns are not secured at all, because if they have work accidents, if they are sick, they do not have the claim, they do not have any reimbursement. So there are many loopholes right here, and that render interns very vulnerable. I think, to me, the most fundamental or critical point is what are the differences between interns and workers? If you do not receive training, if you just work like another worker, why not you quickly go into the job market? At least you got your employment contract and social insurance. So this is the big irony here. The student intern replied to my interviews and questions and say there's no any relation to what we study in school. So he says, come on, what do you think we have learned manning machines on the line for more than 10 hours a day was an internship? Every day is just a repetition of one or two simple motions like a robot. And this is tiring, boring, repetitive. There is a huge discrepancy between the intern's expectations and the actual working conditions during their internship at Foxconn. So this is basically the findings at Foxconn. I know it's quite depressing and negative, but it is happening. And Foxconn is actually not the only black sheep in China. There have been other employers who do similar things by using interns as cheap labor and in a massive number. So when I try to engage in some dialogue with Ross Perlin, I know Ross Perlin had been here in this uni and give a talk too. So his book, Internation, the subtitle is very provocative, How to Earn Nothing and Learn Little in the Brave New Economy. So same like him, I also found that the definition or the boundary of internship or the meaning of intern, that is very ambiguous, that is ill-defined. So while Chinese students, they do earn something, but the absence of educational value in the internship program, it is a big issue. So it is really similar to some findings of Ross Perlin in the UK or US, where interns are doing copyings or making coffees in the Hollywood studio or some other workplaces. It is also quite similar in China that in the factories, these young students are doing work on the assembly line, but without learning much. I wrote an article, and that was published in Rural China and Journal in 2017, and I tried to make an argument that to understand internship, we not only make sense of the voices or expectations of teachers and students, but we also have to put intern economy into the global business structure as well as the political economy of China. So how national policy play out as well as the transnational production system will shape the intern's own learning experience. Now, these interns are the flexible or contingent labor force in the global electronics industry. Let's say Apple's supplier, the largest one is Foxconn. these factories have to adapt to the orders, to the purchasing practice of Apple, Dell, or other companies. They have to extend the working hours to force these interns and workers to adapt to the seasonality, the high demand seasons. Then they have to put more hours to work. So Foxconn have to meet all these production requirements, and Foxconn is incentivized to not to hire long-term employees, because then you have to pay them severance pay or pensions. But interns is good. You just take in 3 months or half a year. So this is the production of not only iPhones or iPad, but the production of flexible labor force or a more precarious labor groups in China. And this includes the agency workers as well as the interns. And Foxconn, as I mentioned, is not just an isolated case. It is, of course, a big case because of the sheer number of interns, which one summer only have 150,000 interns, just one summer, right? So how many more throughout the year? But Foxconn is not alone. When I also read some other information, and our labor rights group, SACOM, Students and Scholars Against Corporate Misbehavior, we also engaged in a new project last year, and that we look into a supplier factory called Quanta. It is also a Taiwanese supplier firm to Apple, Dell, and other companies. We understand that employers are always focusing or prioritizing on profit maximization and labor productivity, and they are not investing so much in terms of skills and learning because they are young. Sometimes the skills training are prioritized for college-level interns, but they are just taken in as the secondary school students, and what they are needed is the obedient workforce. You are young, you are productive, you can work up to 12 hours. But these interns are not given the chance to what they call learning by doing. So this is not a very useful internship to them. If you are interested, I will highly recommend our report published last year, and that is in Chongqing. Chongqing is quite nearby Chengdu, also in the southwestern part of China. And we find how Quanta Computer, when they got the order from Apple making the smartwatches, how these interns are doing day and night to produce the smartwatches for Apple. And now the more later or recent work that I am doing is I am now trying to work with another researcher and see whether we will be able to do survey at some electronics factories, and they are producing for Fairphone. I don't know how many of you have heard about Fairphone. So it is not a phone of Samsung or Apple, but this is a social enterprise based in Amsterdam. And Fairphone is also another brand name, but it is just maybe less popular. They do have a very clear vision here. They want to produce electronics in a fair and decent manner. So this is an ethical phone that they want to make sure the working conditions are decent. The workers are paid on time. The interns might also receive some proper training and guidance. So this is how I am now trying to work with another researcher to gain the consent from Fairphone, and then via its own production base in China to do survey as well as a focus group. So both qualitative and quantitative research might be done. Some access are already promised, so now I'm trying to look deeper what I can do in the next year. These are basically where I am in terms of the electronics industry, and now I will quickly go on with the service sector. As the Chinese governments are opening more courses via the public and private student school, the vocational schools, there are students' opportunities to learn more in terms of e-commerce, logistic, or transportation hubs, how they use the big data or algorithm and the apps to manage the transportation of goods. If I click online to buy a piece of clothes, then within maybe another another 24 hours, it will be shipped right here, door to door. And this entails a new kind of jobs and a new group of workers. In the service sector, especially in the warehousing or the distribution center, we have witnessed a large number of interns who are working for JD.com, Alibaba, Amazon, or other express delivery companies in China. But what they are doing, again, is a very low-level, labor-intensive jobs like scanning the barcode, sorting the goods, and moving the boxes here and there all day. I've been going to Beijing mainly as a participant observer. I sometimes am misunderstood as their girlfriends, as their sisters, or sometimes even their wives, if some of them are older. Then I am always misunderstood because the delivery sector is very male-dominated. I'm the only female who joined them, who shadowed them. And I did really also deliver these goods in a pair. Well, I am unable to take really a heavy, big box onto my shoulder, go up to 6th floor and get it done. But I am perfectly fine to deliver the letters and some lighter, smaller box. So we work together. And these are the workers that I know during my field work, and I will continue about that. I haven't yet seen a large number of students who are doing frontline last mile delivery. And the only reason is because these workers have to be familiar with their workplaces. They have to know here in the small alley or the small pathway, and then who are living on the 3rd floor. If the person is not there, you have to get a communication system and get the goods delivered. Otherwise, you have to go back again. So these students are not very familiar with the geographical or spatial locations, and they are not really there on the front stage, but they are out there at the backstage. So I really want to look deeper. There are two sectors, and I'm still thinking what might be the comparative angle and why these two sectors, or instead of one more new sector. So these are, I also welcome your thought. But to just give you a summary about the student labor system in China, how I understand interns as a group who are quite vulnerable. Of course, I do hope that interns receive meaningful learning experience that will be positive, that will be really sustainable for their future development. But unfortunately, student labor seems to me it is an institutionalized cheap labor system. Under the law, despite the fact that interns should be paid up to 80% of their wages, so at least, that means that you can pay them 100%. But in reality, this becomes the cap, the ceiling. And if they got paid, they will only got 80% of their co-workers, no matter how good you're doing. So interns would have benefits from private insurance scheme if their schools and the employer are responsible enough, then they will get insured. Otherwise, they do not get insurance because they are not like employees. They are not entitled to social or government administered insurance. And finally, in reality, there are always the ambiguity about who are going to be responsible for the students. The employers have to do that 100%, or the schools have to share some responsibility. So in most of the time, it is, in the end, no one take the responsibility. And the students' rights to education and labor, both aspects are remaining very weak. These interns is what I understand as the informal group of workers. They are not the formal workers who receive the employment contract. So informality may be a key concept for me to understand interns. They are flexible, that means temporary. Not many students could be able to stay behind and convert it into the full, regular, permanent workforce. These are the informal labor. Recruitment from the vocational schools are very efficient. You can take in 300 or even 500 students just in one time, and that helps you to produce quickly. As the Chinese law on the whole are improving, that means some workers, if they got 2 contracts, they should be entitled to an open contract. Because of this so-called rigidity, interns become an alternative. Interns becomes the low-cost substitute to the regular workers. Therefore, to put together, it is not just about the business tricks, about how business cut costs or maximize profit. It is also about how the government is not playing its role. The government's channel financial and administrative resources to support Foxconn and other companies to search for the cheap labor. And local education department, they also join in by identifying or selecting the schools that have to play a role by providing interns to the employers, to different companies. And officials will incentivize the schools. If you do follow, then you will get some grants to buy more computers or to improve the school structure. But if the schools do not listen, the schools will also lose the government fund. So we can see the deep-rooted relation or partnership here. The outcome of student exploitation is therefore a joint product of the state as well as the capital. Corporate and government more practices here is the main feature. Formality or informal labor, that is what I understand as the precarious internship here. They are the informal flexible labor, and this is the outcome of the Chinese state that is more concerned about economic growth but do not put the laws and regulations in place. I have to stop here for 7 minutes so that maybe we can all enjoy a short video that is done by Stanford University team. They did go to China and cooperate with Apple. Well, actually, it is only after some of our media scandals, media reporting, then Apple responded quickly by aligning with the academic group, and that it turns out to be the Stanford team, to assure that, well, we do concern about the rights of these students, and now we invited Scott Rosell to cooperate together to make sure that the schools, they are properly run in the central part of China, and that is Henan province. Henan province have more than 1 million in terms of the population, and the ratio of interns and students are also relatively high. And that is why they start off a project to look into different vocational schools and see how the classroom teaching look like. They downplay quite a lot in terms of internship. So this is where maybe we can fill the gap. But here, just to take a look at the video together, and we might get a better sense about the vocational education system in China.
China has really become synonymous with growth and prosperity. In fact, the country faces extreme challenges of education inequality. Almost 90% of children in cities go to high school, but under 40% of kids in rural areas go to high school at all. And so, in addition to a track that sends kids to academic high school, China's also developed a vocational education track.
目前我们河南呢，这个中等职业教育呢有847所，在校生呢是147万人，全国达到教育部颁发的这个中等职业学校基本办学标准呢还不到10%，这个比例是非常低的。
One of the basic problems of the vocational ed system is that there's really no accountability. There's really no way to see if some schools are doing better than others or how to improve them.
我的父亲和母亲是乡下人，种田地的。我的梦想是当一名在电视上播放动漫之类的。我上中学的时候16岁，在班上学习也很好，在班上是班长，想求一所好的学校高中，但是没考上。老师给我介绍了一所中职。我在上课的时候，我的老师把课本往桌子上一放就出去了，也不给我们讲课什么的，就是让我们自习上。 考试的态度不太好，老师还在学校里卖烟卖什么，其他同学都不进班上学，也没人管，不太理想，不太满意，所以我选了退学。
我家在开封市的顺河回族区长上村。我父亲以买卖牛肉，然后我母亲因为身体不太好，所以是在家无业。在这2年中，我非常开心，老师对我非常关心，然后有很多次都给了我很多机会，能让我在这所学校里面发展。
为什么小红走在前面？
我相信我可以在这所学校毕业之后，能找到一个很不错的工作。我来找一个关于影视后期类的制作，然后可以那种剪片子做特效的那种。
我们中职教育它是学制是3年，前2年在学校学习，第3年呢要到企业顶岗实习。在这个实习过程中呢，反映职业教育办学本质的一个重要环节。
Student workers is an important part of the workforce to our member companies and their facilities.
2 years ago, EICC was approached by 2 of our key member companies, Apple and Dell, with the idea to assess and credential vocational schools in China.
As a result of that important challenge, we entered into an agreement between REAP, the Henan Department of Education, to rank those schools so our members can determine the quality programs, and to provide incentives for those schools themselves if they want to become a source of employment to our member companies.
So our study involved about 13,000 students that were located across Henan province in about 120 schools. First of all, we found that overall the average level of quality is very low. Students on average don't seem to be learning a lot. They seem to be dropping out of vocational high schools in fairly high numbers. What we decided to do is introduce a credentialing system that would hold schools accountable for certain standards of improving student learning.
You know, it's been academics, government, and industry working together that have really made this project thrive. And it's been a very complicated project, but you know, I think that it's one of the most successful ones we've ever run here at REAP.
What we found is that schools that were under this credentialing system ended up improving the quality of student learning. Students learn more vocational skills, they learn more math skills. They reported having better experiences inside the classes. They reported seeing less bad behavior from their classmates. They reported being more interested in their learning. It's really, really exciting that this credentialing system actually seems to work.
For the first time, our industry now has a quality list of vocational high schools to which they can rely in making educated and good professional choices in hiring student workers. We encourage our members to actively use this list, which will help elevate and protect those student workers.
Hey, we're talking about, really millions of children who are at the prime level of their educational careers. If they don't learn the skills that they need for the next 40 or 50 years and they'll be in the labor force, then we're going to be losing a whole generation.
中等职业教育呢，实实在在的到了一个提升质量的一个关口，大家一个共同的目的，最后的目标就是要推动我们中职教育的这个质量。
What are students going to get out of this improvement in the system? Well, they're going to actually begin learning things that are useful for them to get jobs, not just for today, but for 20 years in the future. This is going to be a foundation for them to really be able to build the kind of lives that they want to live as China continues to expand and grow and become a high productivity economy. We want to do this not just for the few kids that are getting a good vocational schooling experience, but also for the majority of kids that aren't.
I hope the video is also enjoyable, and it is quite clear following two students. One got an ideal job because of the good teaching, and then the other dropped out. Well, I respect his work, and teaching and learning within the classroom setting is, of course, very important. But what is being downplayed here is the fact that these electronics companies, they do not properly enforce or introduce their internship program, and that there are many cases that the students are not learning anything new or useful in the assembly process. So that is something that I do want to look into it. I am hoping to find a good internship program as well. And therefore, I myself go to another province, not Henan, but Zhejiang, in the eastern coastal area. And that is one school that I go. Well, there are a couple of others, but I focus this one in this presentation so that not taking too much time. But this is the Southern Technician College. I did a classroom observation with the permission of the teachers and the principal. And then I also interviewed the teachers and students separately so that they might have their own security or feeling more comfortable to talk about the experience. Well, you can see that there are many wrong spelling even in the internship manual handbook that are distributed to the students. First of all, they misspell their own school name. Technician college, they miss an I, and then the internship manual, they become internship manual. So you can see that the problems here, it is not just about learning, but teaching is also an issue. But why I still point out this vocational school, because the principal is very enthusiastic. He does tell me that the school have a partnership program with a printing factory in the same region. And the printing factory will send a supervisor to conduct a lecture on a weekly basis. That means the students are learning the required skills, and then they would go to the printing factory to do the internship. I learned from our conversation with Matt that it seems to be good because in one way, there are the match, a good fit between the printing factory and the schools, especially from the learning experience of the students. But it is also running a risk if the technician college rely only on one company. If the company shrink in its production volume or experience a loss of profit, maybe the students also do not have the good choice. Where would they do the internship? So some diversification may be better. But what I want to point out here is that it seems there are more communications between the workplace and the school, and I hope in the long run that will be really benefiting the students' learning, and that they will have something useful and becoming a more stable and secured labor force instead of just shopping around to find a job here for a few months and then they have to move on. So now I have another 2 years to engage in this internship project. I do intend to formulate more clearer research questions and to find something new in terms of the diverse or different internship experience and what are the characteristics of the respective sector and how it will shape the internship program. So different qualitative method as well as some surveys will be done. And basically the access to the workplaces are still quite challenging, but I'm still working hard on that. And one new question that I do want to explore, but it needs a longer time, is whether students will have room to resist. If they don't go to work, if they refuse the internship, because the internship is not bringing them the benefit, can they do it? What will be the consequence? Will they join in some solidarity actions with other co-workers in the same workplace? So it is more about a Marxist analysis in terms of labor fragmentation or labor solidarity. But for the students themselves, I know they are doing internship in order to graduate. So if they do learn something important to them in their long run for their future, that would be good. So I would be interested to see whether there are more adequate teacher support instead of just another layer of management, and whether the ethics of craftsmanship would be really cultivated to them. That means the attitude at work and the solid skills that they are acquiring within the internship. Where the workers, when they see many injustice or when they encounter some discontent, will they voice up? How do they stand up and talk about it? Because these interns are not belonging to the trade unions. So what are the collective vehicle or the protection out there? And I have learned from a case study in Honda factory, a car parts manufacturer, where the interns and the co-workers, they join together to fight for higher wages. So they involve in a strike. But that is a very small factory with only 1,800 workers and interns together, but interns make up more than 70% of the workforce. So that is, again, very stunning to me. How come such a large proportion of interns, and how did the strike happen? They win, actually, they got some increase in their wages. So to conclude, I do see workplace where the interns and co-workers are there making a very dynamic intern economy in China. And China's economy development depends heavily on vocational education, and student workers become a significant portion of the emerging Chinese workforce. And to reflect on the student internship research for some years now, I am really interested in research and actions, how to safeguard the interns' collective rights and their interests. I would suggest that perhaps we should improve the curriculum in the school level. Pre-departure, we should also enable them to learn some labor rights and regulations in terms of fair pay, that you should be having a written contract or at least an agreement that would specify what are the learning goals or what would be the expected outcome. So I do hope that there would be an internship agreement at least, if it is not an employment contract. And we want to promote the monitoring or the joint monitoring program among the school company and the government. Well, that is not easy, definitely, given the fact that the local state has its own stake, its own interest or vested interest, and companies, again, is more focusing on profit maximization and flexibility of organization. So whether they are really devoting resources to train them, this remains a big question. But I think independent researchers can play a role here. We can build some network with the students or teachers so that they would receive some moral support as well as tangible needs. When there are needs, we can respond to them. And finally, about Foxconn in Wisconsin, I am anticipating more college students from Wisconsin-Madison would also do internship in their so-called innovation centers or other manufacturing facilities. Will there be interested scholars right here who also initiate a new project on Foxconn Wisconsin internship? I will be very, very happy to engage and to work together. So thank you so much for your patience, and your questions, comments, feedback are most welcome. Thank you so much.
Do you have any idea how many of the interns go on to permanent or formal employment?
Foxconn is 0%. And the reason is interns really are not interested to work any longer. They would rather prefer the internship be cut short and that they can go back to school to do something more meaningful, like playing basketball or some other activities that they are more enjoyable. And Foxconn wants to retain them, to be sure, but not all, because Foxconn really wants to use a more flexible short-term labor force, so that just to keep the production season going. And therefore, in my research, I do not see any interns who go beyond their internship period and stay behind. Yeah. Well, the pay is not really attractive, even though Foxconn is the largest private employer in China, but they are just really paying a little bit more than the minimum level. And the reason is just to compete with Quanta or other employers for young workers. It is not because of doing donation or for benevolent behavior. So it is not at all about the corporate responsibility to pay more. It is just because of some demand and supply issue, then they pay for the workers, but it is not necessarily paying at the same level or even more for interns.
Do you follow, because internship is part of the curriculum, so after they graduate, is there any relation with their first full-time job after they leave school, and they still stay in the same industry or same level of job or same pay? Do you follow a group of students all the time?
She basically asked me whether I follow these Foxconn interns or some other interns I have ever met. After they did the first internship, will they stay in the same industry or they keep changing jobs differently? They do mobile a lot. In my sample, in my pool, these young graduates or the teenagers, they do change job very often. If they have a cousin, they have a sister working somewhere else, they sometimes will just follow. And if just for a little more in terms of the wages, they will sometimes also move. I think the main issue here is whether they see their career path. If they do not find something that are meaningful and engaging them, they just try to, like any other, find new jobs or even different sector so that they might gain more. When they are about late 20s or 30s, do you know most come up topics in my interview, most frequently topics, indeed not necessarily about skills or jobs, but how to find lovers, how to get married. So I want to make more girlfriends and then get married and give birth to find a family, to build a home. So this is the reason why they see the wages are so low in the factory. In factory, they only provide you with the dormitory, no matter whether you are single or you're married, you only have one bunk bed space, upper bunk or lower bunk. It is not providing you with any more housing benefit in terms of supporting your family or your kid under the same roof. So the pressure to make more money or to think of a family, this is more, I think, immediate and really their own concern. Yeah, I of course understand that I should be more scientific and do more long-term study, longitudinal study to check the students and see where they are, how far they can go, but I haven't yet got the resources or time to engage on that. Now I'm still very focusing on the black boxes about the internship processes, learning, and whether the employer are doing their own job in providing them the training. Otherwise, it is just another excuse to get something like an outsourced or subcontracted labor.
In this vocational colleges which you looked at, did you have any adult learners or were they mostly the young, just high school graduates taking that as an option?
They are mainly the students between 15 or 16 years of age to about adult age. There have been college students that are taken in by Foxconn as well, because Foxconn have been doing lots of recruitment in Peking University, Tsinghua University, and some other places. So there are, yes, the older or more senior college students who are doing internship, they are different. They do have more opportunities to learn a little bit on administration or coordination, but they are relatively in a small number. And what I'm more interested is the fact that because vocational high school level, internship is mandatory, and that is happening in such hundreds of thousands in terms of number. So I'm more interested about the systematic pattern and whether they are learning something valuable And if they are interested, they might also apply for college or university, and they will get their technical or educational credential in the long run. But if at this level they are not learning anything substantial, why not you just give them back the time to learn something in the school, or to arrange for another new internship program? But not many are doing something here to really help and support them.
This is focused on vocational education levels where those kinds of internships are mandated. And is there a different pattern in China with the higher education internships to some extent? And I suspect there might be. And also just wanted to mention that Foxconn is working with several of our campuses around the state and have actually taken interns from our engineering program in Milwaukee to work in Taiwan. So that process has been going on for about a year, but it's a small number. And it's at the higher education level, not at the vocational level.
At a glance, it looks quite nice. These engineers, American students, are going to Taiwan, the headquarters of Honghai or Foxconn, and then to have some exposure or widen their horizon. It seems to be quite good, but if here, do you know any cases already?
International students from Malaysia, so they did their undergraduate here, and then right now they are in Taiwan, did their training because they say like a factory in Wisconsin is still building, so that's how I understand. But they got the pay at the U.S. Salary scales, but the living cost is very low in Taiwan.
And you're concerned about the parallel internship program at the college level, right? Matt, do you want to add here about the Chinese universities or colleges? How do they run their internship program? I haven't yet really go to any university and explore their internship program.
One of the things that strikes me about the difference between what Jenny is finding in vocational high schools is about scale.
Yes.
Where the two colleges and one vocational college I've studied, they're doing things at scale, but only for 1 week long field trips to some of these companies. So they're not doing any hands-on work. And then at some of the smaller vocational colleges, they're investing a lot of money into building facilities on the campuses, so they don't have to send students out to do internships. Part of that is, again, scale. There's so many students in higher education, and there's not enough employers to host meaningful hands-on learning opportunities. But it looks very different from what Jenny's finding at the high school level.
I'm struck about the differences. Yeah, if 1 week a field trip, then it is a field trip, but the internship will last for even a year, based on my findings.
What kind of career information or career guidance resources are available in technical colleges to support the students in making decisions?
At the schools that I talked to the teachers, because even in Foxconn, when I was there, more than a dozen of the teachers are stationed out there. So I talked to them. They are the career counselors. They are the form master or form mistress, teaching them Chinese literature or language. So they are not necessarily well equipped to provide guidance in terms of work or jobs to the students. I would see quite inadequate indeed, because the schools are more at a sandwich position. They are fulfilling the requirements of the local governments. At one point of time, the provincial governments are sending off the formal notice to each and every vocational school. If you cannot meet the student quota by this deadline, you will lose the government funding. So it is really a compulsory, a forced labor scheme that I am witnessing. And there's no much room for a vocational school to say no. And therefore, it seems to me everything is happening on such a big rush because of the Foxconn relocation. They need new human hands, not just robots, to cope with their iPad production. It was exactly the time, 2011, when the suicides just make Foxconn into a headline of the newspaper. Then Foxconn and Apple tries to find new location so that the attention might be diversified a bit, or Apple originally tries to look into the factory only produce one product for itself, so it is a risk management too. But it just turned out the fact that they are using large number of interns to produce the original iPad to iPad 2. So that was the moment when I did the very first field work. And the teachers are just following the interns to make sure that they don't run away. So the teachers are really becoming the second layer of management instead of providing them with emotional support or proper teaching guidance. I do talk to some girls, they have menstruation problems, menstruation disorder or the other emotional problems because they are working day and night and this had never happened to their lives. So bodily impact as well as some other unpreparedness to face such a huge huge shop floor where there are machines, there are many people who are working day and night or hurrying them to do better. So all these are very stressful and they are quite at a loss. They are upset, they are very disappointed, and I could only talk to them during those days. I got their names, I got their contact number, I sometimes also take pictures. Yeah, but it is also difficult for me to maintain contact with them because they are young. Once they get back to the school, they may not be also very willing to talk to someone who is happening to be just a researcher there instead of someone who are closer to them, like their parents. Yeah, so I have some limitations too.